I've flown quite a large number of aircraft, and my favorite jet is the F-86E. Now, why do I choose the E? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the F-86, the wonderful thing about it was its harmony of control. This is the thing that a pilot looks for. When you have perfect harmony of control, it bonds you to the aircraft. You feel you're not a pilot in an airplane, you feel you're a unit, single unit. You work together and you don't think I'm flying an airplane, you think we're going out to do combat with an entity. Well, I should say nowadays with an item. And there we go. I was looking forward to this. I had to wait till I went to America, to Patuxent River, on a posting there, to fly the F-86 for the first time. And the first one I flew was the F-86A. Swept wing airplane and a beautiful jet, as I say, wonderful harmony and control. But of course, there was more to this now, that we were into the upper jet age, and we were talking about even supersonic flight. So the big hurdle on the way was the transonic region, getting through that. This was helped by having swept wings, but it wasn't the answer to getting through. All that swept wings did was make it easier to get further through the transonic region, but it didn't get you through the Mach number hump to go supersonic. So it could only be achieved at that stage in dive aircraft. We couldn't do it in level flight. The F-86 was quite simple to take through there. You had a little bit of a push, maybe a dive of 30 degrees was required, a little bit of a push. And you could feel, as in all transonic flight, you do feel a trim change, a considerable nose-down trim change, which of course needs quite a bit of pressure on the stick to counteract. Now, as time went on, I was able to fly later models of the F-86, and the E was the one that had what is called the flying tail. Normally in the old aircraft, pre that era, you had tailplane, elevator. Tailplane fixed, elevator moving. And this is the kind that gave you the big trim change stick forces in the transonic region. When you had the flying tail, you had a single solid tailplane, no elevator attached to it, but the whole tailplane rotated. And this was so effective that it almost eliminated the huge stick forces you would have in this transonic change of trim. And that's why I remember the F-86E with such pleasure. It was just, I would say, easy play to go through it into the transonic routes. Quite apart from that, in every way it was an outstanding aircraft. Simple, straightforward cockpit, wonderful canopy, wonderful view. I would say almost a perfect cockpit, because you felt that, oh, this is the airplane for me. And I think I've never spoken to anybody who didn't enjoy flying the F-86.
I was very fortunate. In fact, I consider it a privilege, Terry. I was one of the first exchange pilots to come to the USAF, and this was in 1948. And the reason for the scheme was to carry on the magnificent, and it really was magnificent, coordination and cooperation between RAF Bomber Command and 8th Air Force, who was then based in England, B-17s, the Lancasters and Halifaxes. When I came out to the US and I checked into the embassy and asked them where I was going, and they said, well, we don't really know, that's up to the US Air Force, they'll tell you. But we think you'll either go to Bangor, Maine, up in Maine, Dye Air Force Base, F-84s, or you'll go to California, Riverside, California, 1st Fighter Group. But they'll tell you down at TAC. So I was sent down to TAC, and I met General Quesada, and General Lee was deputy. And they said, Harbison, you're a most fortunate chap. You're going to our premier fighter group, Riverside, California. And not only that, they'll soon be getting a new airplane. At that time, they were equipped with B-model F-80s, P-80 as they were in those days. I'd been flying Meteors with the RAF at the time, and the Meteor had a fair amount of thrust, and I found the F-80 very pleasant to fly, but very down on thrust. Anyway, the first 86s came to the 1st Fighter Group in February of '49. And I was very fortunate to be one of the first to check out. Now, whether this was a reason being that if he can do it, anybody can, or whether they considered me expendable, I'm not sure. But I was very lucky in that I checked out, and that really was where my love affair with this F-86 started, because I flew it for a further 18 months, and from there I was sent back to the United Kingdom to the Central Fighter Establishment at the Royal Air Force West Raynham, which is a mini Nellis. This where all the fighter doctrine in the RAF was developed and generated. I didn't realize at the time, but the RAF were being lent 2 F-86s to do a trial on, and I was supposed to fly on the trial. The squadron commander of the Air Fighting Development Squadron, to which the 2 86s were going, for some reason or other didn't think this was a good idea. He said I'd be prejudiced, I knew the airplane. And I thought that would be rather a good thing rather than a bad thing, but there you are, that's the way it was. And I went up to Burtonwood near Manchester and fetched the first F-86. It came in on a boat down the Manchester Ship Canal and flew it down to RAF West Raynham. And that was a highlight to me to fly an 86s from Burtonwood down, because I was given carte blanche to beat the airfield up, which I did. What happened then was that the Korean War had started, and although we had several American aces came through West Raynham and gave us a talk, we wanted to see it firsthand. The USAF agreed that a team of 4 could go to Korea, to the 4th Fighter Group at Kimpo and the 51st Fighter Group at Suwon, led by a wing commander, John Baldwin, who was a World War II Typhoon ace, and I was a squad leader, I was his deputy. Anyway, we got out to Korea. I met about 20 to 30 people I knew, because they were all ex-1st Fighter Group people, so I was accepted. As I said later on in a report, you know, where better can you observe the Korean War than in the cockpit of an F-86? And it was a fascinating experience. The sort of things we were pushing out at West Raynham before I left was that the day of the dogfight was probably over. It wasn't. That was a complete fiction. That was far from over. In fact, mind you, Korea was probably the last conventional gun versus gun fighter. We didn't carry any missiles at all. It was airplane against airplane. The airplanes were pretty evenly matched, but any advantage there was, the 86 had it. The ratio of shoot-downs was 8 to 1. The US, the Western pilots were shooting it down at the rate of 8 to 1. The MiGs had some advantages and they had some disadvantages, Terry, and people forget there were disadvantages for them. The Russians were flying the airplanes mostly, and Chinese. The North Koreans were a laugh. And the Russians were using Antung and the clutch of airfields there to cycle the Russian fighter regiments through there to get experience. And we used to call it Antung University. And you'd see them come in, very timorous to begin with. They'd stay high, and then later on, with more experience, they'd drop 4 down, and then they'd start mixing it. They were able to dictate when they wanted to fight because they had better altitude performance than we were and could get higher than we could get. So they could dictate when they wanted to fight and when they couldn't. They also had complete radar coverage and had direction under the radar from Antong as to where we were, and it could be vectored onto us. Whereas we were 220 miles from MiG Alley, and we didn't have radar cover. We had ELINT cover. In other words, people could hear the Russian pilots talking, and Bob Dorr was one of them at the time, an interpreter listening into their conversations. And we could be told that there's MiG activity in such and such an area by the people listening to them talk, but they weren't seeing them, so everybody would head in that area. It was a fascinating time, it really was, and I have nothing but admiration for the US pilots who were keen as mustard. There were people in the RAF who pride and joy was that the RAF were pretty good at fighter operations. But I can tell you that we'd have to get up pretty early in the morning to beat the chaps in Korea. They were good, very good. They perhaps took more risks than they needed to take because they become MiG happy, all wanting to be aces. But anyway, Baldwin, who was the leader, went missing on his 13th mission. And I was left to write this ginormous report, which really spoiled my tour. And the report was the F-86 versus the MiG-15, which I produced this and came back in July to the Central Fighter Establishment for the annual fighter convention, where I had to give the keynote speech of the 86 versus the MiG-15. And at the end of that, the Commander-in-Chief of 2nd ATAF, Germany, said to me, Harbison, he said, I don't know whether you know it or not, but we're getting 460 F-86s in the RAF. This was because we were behind on the development of the Hunter. And he said, I'm prepared to offer you command of the 1st Squadron. How would you like that? And I said, I'd be delighted, sir. But there's a snag. And he became all air marshalish and said, what do you mean? I offer you a squadron and you say there's a snag. I said, well, Sir Basil Embry, the Commander-in-Chief of Fighter Command, has offered me command of 56 Squadron with Swifts, the other new airplane. He said, you don't want to fly that thing, do you? And I said, well, I really prefer to fly the 86 because it's an airplane I like. Shortly after that, I was summoned to Fighter Command by Basil Embry, who didn't invite me to sit down. He stood there, I saluted him, and he said, looked up, and he said, what's this I hear, Harbison, about you spurning me? I offer you command of 56 Squadron, and now I hear you don't want it. I said, oh, it's not really like that, sir. I said, Sir Robert Foster said that you give me command of an 86 Squadron. I said, I know the airplane, and that probably would be more useful to the RAF if we had someone who knew the airplane when we're introducing it in service. He said, you're absolutely correct. Of course you may. Off you go. So I was given command of number 67 Squadron at RAF Wildenrath, which was the first RAF 86 Squadron. And I had command of that for 2.5 years. So on and off, I was with the 86 for a long time. And I feel that I knew it pretty well. It was a very honest airplane, handled beautifully. In fact, it handled better than the Hunter did, but didn't have the thrust that the Hunter had. I would very much have liked to have flown the Australian version of the 86 because it had an Avon in it, the same engine that the Hunter has, and was armed not with 4 650 calibers, but with 2 30mm cannons. Very heavy armament.
On December 17th, 1950, while patrolling Korean airspace, a United States Air Force F-86 Sabre spotted the distinct silhouette of a Model 15 MiG below. The Sabre's pilot descended rapidly towards the target and maneuvered behind the Soviet-built aircraft. The MiG swerved to evade the American pilot's sights, momentarily appearing as if it were the Predator. However, it took only a few minutes for the American pilot to position himself for the shot, and within seconds, the struggle for air superiority over Korea, with the prestige of two opposing philosophies at stake, had begun. The history of jet-powered fighters actually dates back to before the Second World War. The first Allied jet fighter to enter service was the British Gloucester Meteor. Utilizing two centrifugal flow engines, the Meteor increased fighter speeds from the previous maximum of 400 miles per hour to around 500 miles per hour. These Meteors were stationed in Europe just before the end of the Second World War. They garnered significant interest from American airmen, as the United States Air Force didn't have an equivalent jet fighter in service at that time. In fact, the Meteor saw very little combat, primarily being kept in England to prevent the new technology from falling into enemy hands. However, it proved vitally useful for shooting down the V-1 weapons fired against Britain, a role where its high speed was a significant advantage. The British fear of the Meteor falling into German hands was somewhat paradoxical, as Germany was at least a year ahead in jet design and had flown jet-powered aircraft before the war. Here, a young German pilot received some last-minute advice before his first jet flight. Undoubtedly, the Luftwaffe's most impressive success was the Messerschmitt 262. This excellent aircraft, powered by two axial flow jet engines, was actually faster than the Meteor. Additionally, it featured a successful aerodynamic shape, and later models were designed to utilize a swept wing philosophy that German engineers were developing at the time. Over 1,500 Messerschmitt 262s were built, but on Hitler's insistence, many were designated for a bomber role, a function for which the Swallow, as it was known, was not ideally suited. Eventually, and initially unofficially, the German High Command permitted the 262 to be used as a fighter. In the short time it served in this capacity, the 262's remarkable speed wreaked havoc among Allied bombers. Unfortunately for the Germans, the 262 came just too late to save the Third Reich, but it did give the Allies another insight as to the possibilities of jet development. Focusing more on improving piston engine design, America didn't begin developing jet technology until 1942. Had the war continued, the excellent Lockheed Shooting Star would have been its first combat jet. This is a photo reconnaissance version, but the basic fighter, which saw service for many years, was essentially the same. The Republic Thunderjet offered further improvements, with a slender, streamlined fuselage and more powerful jet engines. However, both the P-80 and the P-84 used a straight wing design that wasn't significantly different from the shapes employed during World War II. The North American Aviation Company initially adopted a conventional straight-wing layout for its first jet. However, they gained access to data on German swept-wing technology immediately after the war, leading them to modify the wing and tailplane positions into a swept-back format. The P-86 Sabre, as it became known, ultimately incorporated many other advanced features, such as the all-moving tailplane, automatic slats on the wing, and powered air brakes. Most importantly, its swept surfaces reduced air resistance, allowing for higher speeds. At the heart of the P-86 was the General Electric J47 jet engine, which utilized the axial flow principle, similar to that used in the earlier German Me-262, but now more sophisticated and refined. The jet concept operated on the principle of air being drawn in through the nose intake of the aircraft, then passing into an axial flow compressor area where the air is progressively compressed through 12 different stages. It's then forced into the combustion chambers where atomized fuel is injected and ignited. The resulting combustion and expansion of exhaust gases provide the necessary thrust and also drive the compressor, allowing the cycle to continue. The thrust produced by this jet engine technology was something that ground crew also had to adapt to. No-go areas were declared in front of the engine intake to prevent personnel from being sucked in, and behind the jet because of the phenomenal blast. One problem all jet engines had compared to piston aircraft was their vast fuel consumption. In the confined space of a fighter's fuselage, every square inch of available space was dedicated to fuel storage. The Sabre, like many other fighters, also employed drop tanks to provide extra kerosene. Most Sabres that went into production were equipped with 6 50mm machine guns as standard armament, mounted on each side of the heavily armoured pilot's position. Mainly due to the advantages of the swept wing at high speed, the Sabre went into production on October 16, 1947, with an initial order of 33 F-86A and 190 F-86B aircraft, which were later reclassified as F-86As. From the moment a pilot pushed the external switch to operate the powered canopy, they were stepping into a new world. Once inside, the pilot would first check the ejector seat locking pins, which couldn't be removed until shortly before taxiing to prevent accidental firing while the plane was still on the ground. They would then take stock of the staggering array of controls and instrumentation integral to the new technology. Managing a Sabre was far more complex than the stick and rudder techniques required of earlier planes. Here, 5,200 pounds of thrust had to be controlled and directed to propel what was at the time the world's fastest fighter.
George Tower, this This is Air Force 184 requesting taxi clearance. Over.
Air Force 184, this is George Tower. Traffic southwest, cleared to runway 21 right.
One difference between jet-powered and piston engines is that jet engines take some time to build up the necessary thrust to get the aircraft off the ground. This was particularly true for heavier jet bombers, but even fighters needed to build up thrust before takeoff. If you look carefully at this shot, you can see the automatic leading edge flaps open, providing the pilot with more control at low speeds. In every respect, the Sabre was an aircraft for fighter pilots, and its nimbleness and agility were to prove invaluable in the years to come. During this period, the Air Force replaced the designation P for pursuit with the more fitting F for fighter, renaming the Sabre the F-86. Throughout the late 1940s and early 1950s, the Air Force showcased the Sabre's performance in numerous public displays. These demonstrations often featured up to 80 aircraft flying in intricate formations, showcasing their aerial skills. The breaking of the sound barrier was still a novelty, and although by then it was a routine for the pilots, at these airshows it was a highlight of the day for the crowds. Public confidence in American air power became crucial in 1949 when the Soviets demonstrated a formidable capability. They had replicated the American B-29 long-range bombers, capable of reaching the US on one-way missions. Moreover, they successfully detonated an atomic bomb, ending America's nuclear monopoly. This, alongside deteriorating US-Soviet relations, sparked significant concern. To counter potential Russian threats, production of the Sabre was ramped up, and an all-weather variant was developed, the F-86D Sabre Dog. This aircraft featured a sophisticated radar scanner mounted over the nose to detect enemy bombers in all weather conditions, including at night. It also carried a rack of unguided rockets in the fuselage, deemed more effective for engaging attacking Russian bombers. When conflict erupted, it unfolded in a distant land. North Korean troops invaded South Korea, prompting the United Nations to intervene, and US B-29s were swiftly deployed to the region to target northern factories and communications. Despite not being ideally suited for this role, the B-29s effectively carried out their missions, securing US dominance of the skies over Korea. However, on November 1, 1950, American pilots were surprised to encounter the first Russian-built MiG-15s. These aircraft represented a significant technological leap beyond what the Soviets were previously believed to possess. Even with their defensive armament, B-29s stood little chance against these advanced Soviet fighters. In response to this new threat, the Pentagon ordered F-86s to be deployed to Korea, marking the beginning of the intense MiG versus Sabre aerial combat.
The first 4 flights into the area will stay below the contrails and keep a close watch on the fighter bombers. The last 2 flights will go above the contrails and check very closely for any MiG aircraft that might come in above the cons. Now, if you see MiGs up there today, call them out. Give their altitude, direction, and geographical location on the map. And call it out and then get off the radio. Now remember, once you look around, keep your speed up, and if you do get a bounce, cut him off, and drive in range. When you get in range, shoot, and when you shoot, shoot to kill. Anybody got any questions? Okay, let's go again.
Typically, Sabre forces operated in groups of 4 aircraft.
Tiger lead, Tiger 2 here. I got a couple bogeys out there with 1 coming around at 2 level. Roger, boy, I got him. He's going down. You got him? All right, boy, that's a good deal. Watch it. We got 4 of them coming in here on us at 7 o'clock. Hang on. We got 2 down here walls at 3 o'clock position. I haven't done him. Go ahead, take it, and I'll cover you. All right, I'm going in now. Okay, you're clear. Go ahead, go ahead. I'm clear. We're going to start fire now. You're still clear. All right, look at him shift off. Okay, he's down, boy. You got him too.
By 1952, American pilots had engaged MiG-15s in numerous successful sorties. Similar to the dynamics of the Second World War, a group of elite aces emerged. Men who demonstrated exceptional skill and determination in combat with their fighters. One of these American aces was Colonel Gabreski. Gabreski arrived in Korea already decorated as an ace, having flown Thunderbolts during World War II, but he further cemented his reputation as a MiG killer. The skill and experience of American pilots were crucial, considering that the MiG-15 itself was a formidable aircraft. While MiG kills outnumbered Sabre losses, the MiG-15 was undeniably a brilliant aircraft and, in several aspects, superior to the Sabre. Due to the MiG-15's impressive performance, the Air Force was eager to acquire one to study its design and capabilities, and in the later stages of the conflict, dropped leaflets over enemy territory offering enemy pilots $100,000 if they defected with their plane to the south. One pilot, Lieutenant Rowe, accepted the offer, and it must have been a surprising sight for the ground crew at Kimpo on September 21, 1953, when a MiG-15 landed. The aircraft was soon in the hands of American pilots, eager to fly and evaluate the MiG for themselves. One of the standout features of the MiG-15 was its armament, a combination of one 37mm and two 23mm cannon mounted in a compact, removable unit. This setup allowed for quick replacement by ground crew, enabling rapid turnaround times for the aircraft. The borrowed MiG, equipped with ammunition, provided an opportunity to test its firepower. Aircraft equipped with heavy cannon typically have a slower rate of fire compared to the 6 machine guns on the Sabre, but they deliver significantly greater hitting power. The MiG's armament prompted the US to develop a configuration for the Sabre, featuring 4 20mm cannon, replacing the original 6 50mm machine guns. Despite arriving late in the Korean conflict, the cannon-equipped Sabre achieved several MiG kills. However, for most of the campaign, it was the Sabre's machine guns, known for their high rate of fire, that brought down the majority of the MiGs. Pilots were trained to approach the enemy not directly from behind, but slightly from the side, as this angle presented a larger fuselage surface to target. Despite the Sabre's superior design and firepower, the F-86s faced formidable challenges. Nevertheless, the original Sabre design's excellence and its robust airframe proved crucial. Many aircraft returned home with significant damage, yet were still airworthy, a testament to the Sabre's durability and the skill of its pilots. The Sabre's heavy armor for pilots played a crucial role in saving many lives during the Korean conflict. As the Korean conflict progressed, American aces were redeployed to train new pilots in combat techniques specific to the F-86. This approach, where experienced pilots passed on their skills to younger aviators, was a pivotal part of the American strategy that ultimately prevailed in the Korean air conflict. Given the MiG-15's comparable overall capability to the Sabre, the skill of the pilots was often the deciding factor in engagements. Had the MiG been in the hands of better trained pilots, the outcome of the conflict might have been very different. It was the greater competence and better training of the American pilots with their consequent greater skill that was the real margin between the two planes. Preparing for flight was a complex and weighty process for the pilot. They would have to don a heavy flight suit, along with a lined vest, and carry the obligatory .45 automatic. Additionally, they had to don a Mae West life preserver, an essential parachute, and a survival kit containing various items from a rubber raft to a homing beacon. By the time they settled into the Sabre cockpit, complete with helmet and oxygen mask, they likely felt deeply integrated with the aircraft. This connection between pilot and machine was not just symbolic, but also essential to the effectiveness of US fighters during the Korean campaign. The Sabre's design allowed for significant versatility in its role. Originally an interceptor, it could also be configured to carry air-to-ground rockets or bombs when necessary. The Sabre's design versatility made it well suited for roles beyond interception. Although it was seldom used in interdiction missions during the Korean War, other countries in different theaters employed the F-86 very effectively as a ground attack aircraft. In the mid-1950s, just after the Korean conflict, the US developed air-to-air homing missiles like the innovative Sidewinder. These missiles were integrated onto Sabres to enhance their interception capabilities. In this scenario, a standard 5-inch unguided rocket is fired from one side of an F-86 to serve as a test target for the Sidewinder missile fired from the other side. The Sabre's production extended beyond the United States, with manufacturing in Canada and Australia and assembly in Italy and Japan. However, one of the most intriguing developments occurred in Australia. The Royal Australian Air Force sought an enhanced version of the Sabre, leading to a comprehensive redesign by the Commonwealth Aircraft Factory. They strengthened and lengthened the fuselage to accommodate the Avon engine, also used in their Canberra bombers. This engine provided 50% more thrust than the early Sabre engines, although integrating it posed significant challenges. The Australian Sabre emerged as the most powerful variant produced. While its maximum speed wasn't significantly higher than the American version, it boasted superior acceleration and lifting capabilities. The large letter P on the side of this plane is the standard Commonwealth symbol for prototype, similar to the Y used by American aircraft. Australia produced 112 Avon-powered Sabres, some of which were transferred to the Indonesian Air Force as they were replaced by the French Mirage. By the early 1960s, the Sabre, still in service with many nations, was beginning to show its age. While the addition of Sidewinder missiles bolstered its effectiveness as an interceptor, no aircraft, even the renowned F-86, could remain in the front line indefinitely. Moreover, North American aviation had introduced a successor in the form of the F-100 Super Sabre. Larger and capable of speeds up to 1,000 miles per hour, the F-100 Super Sabre marked the beginning of the famed Century series of American fighter aircraft. In the early 1960s, the Sabres were gradually phased out and reassigned to roles within the Home Guard. Here, a pilot inspects an F-86 Sabre that has been relegated to Home Guard duties. Once again, the synergy between pilot and aircraft proves to be highly effective, even in this new capacity. The skills and experience of a combat veteran are invaluable to the nation, and so is the enduring value of the investment in a well-built and long-serving aircraft like the F-86 Sabre. Even after its retirement from frontline service, the Sabre continued to serve a vital role in the hands of skilled and dedicated aircrew within the Home Guard, providing a robust second line of defense. In the United States, the F-86 remained operational with National Guard squadrons well into the 1970s, and it continues to be flown by air forces in various countries around the world. The design, originating in the 1940s, has proven exceptionally durable, not only because of the Sabre's solid construction, but also because it consistently fulfilled its mission requirements.
All
All of these accidents occurred within USAFE. There are minor accidents and major accidents. Some leave the aircraft in one piece, some in pieces. Others just leave a hole in the ground. You can have accidents in any kind of aircraft. Almost $17 million. That was the cost of major aircraft accidents in USAFE alone during a single year. That $17 million represents only the cost of the aircraft after deducting depreciation, and does not include the bills for personal injuries and property damage. Lives? Who can calculate them in dollars? More than 58% of all aircraft accidents in USAFE are attributed to pilot error. The truth is that you, the pilot, can create or fail to prevent a situation that can cost your life. Flying safety records indicate that the fellows who wind up on the Forms 14 are not always the victims of a single drastic mistake. More often than not, the cause is an accumulation of seemingly minor errors. Most of you pilots are good at your jobs. You've had the best training, you've got good equipment, but it's the little things that catch you. Just like they almost caught this pilot. Like a lot of other pilots, he thought that flying safety was personal, just between him and his plane. He slept through flying safety talks, or he let his mind drift. But he was converted. He became a believer, but fast.
Yeah, I buy it now, but my Frau almost collected on that fat insurance policy before I saw the light. It happened on one of those routine boondoggles. Yesterday I flew down here to Alpha from Bravo Air Base and RON.
Hey, Pop, Mommy.
Should have left here a few hours ago, but I was partying last night and... you know how that goes. A little oxygen will knock this in the head.
Don't kid me, that was you at the wall.
Oh, no, it wasn't, boy.
Morning, sir.
You got a clearance form?
Going on a jet flight?
Yeah.
Here you are.
Thanks a lot.
Want a local map?
Yeah, okay. Paperwork. Reams of it. 16 copies to the devil himself, with an info copy to every head shrinker in the puzzle palace. All this junk for a simple little flight. There's no sweat on this one. I can do it standing on my head. Well, like they say, you can't fight City Hall. Frequencies. Yeah, I know what Bravo Beacon is. Well, now to get my weather. Yeah, I better check the NOTAMs first. Boy. I just left Bravo yesterday. Nothing could have changed in that time. Let's see. Everything seems to be okay here. Cold front moving down.
Hi there. May I help you, sir?
No, thanks. I've been checking on weather for years.
Well, okay.
That's all I'd need. A lecture on climatology. Now, Bravo is still VFR. I'm okay. Well, the old dog's in good shape. Everything checks out okay. I have a full service job, except for the oxygen supply, but that's just what I asked for. I'll have enough for this hop even after I take care of that hangover. Gotta report that lousy cabin pressure seal. Thanks. Yeah, plenty of fuel, full internal load, and 50 gallons in each drop. The contest is ready to start. Enough of that hangover. This ought to knock the edge off it. And we'll let it ride at 100% while I taxi.
Wind Alpha, clear for takeoff, winds 260 degrees at 14, over.
Roger, rolling.
Alpha, airport at 16, clear tower, frequency over.
Roger, tower, out.
Yeah, this is great. Feel a lot better now. Hangover's gone. Everything's in the green. Altitude Angels 30, heading 030. Everything's right on the money. Approaching the control zone now. Looks like a little weather up ahead. Better give a position check to ground control.
Railroad, this is Air Force Jet 24129.
Air Force 24129, this is Railroad.
Over Buckshot at 1215, 30,000. Victor Fox Alpha to Bravo. Estimating Bravo at 40 past the hour.
Roger, 129, out.
You know what's wrong with me? Must be that hangover again. Toot, forgot the blasted oxygen. I gotta get this frapping thing off. Get on in a hurry. It's better. Nice, thick air. What a stupid move. Should have remembered to turn off that 100%. Oh, well, it's over. I'm okay now. Gotta watch that fuel, though. This can is really gulping it down at this altitude. I better tune in the bird dog about now. Now, let's see. Bravo beacon is 327. Whoops. Can't take much of that. Hangover's back. Now, that's better. He must be off a little. I don't know why I had to make a right drift correction. Must be a pretty strong crosswind. I better get a steer. A practice steer, that's all I need.
Bravo DF from 24129. Request practice steer to base.
Roger, 24129. Steer to base with 0 winds at 090 degrees.
090. Well, there must be some mistake. I have your beacon right on the nose, and you give me a steer of 090.
Request you check that steer.
Roger, 129er. Transmit for another steer. Roger, 129er. You have a Class Alpha steer. Your last transmission indicates. So your steer is 092 degrees magnetic. Over.
But how can that be? I'm bird dog right on the money at 327 KCs. Must have made a mistake.
0129. For your information, Bravo beacon has been changed from 327 KCs to 205 KCs. The notification of this change was distributed yesterday in all bases in a nodal. You must have 326 KCs. The frequency from Medora Beacon, 60 miles northwest of Bravo.
Nodums. Roger, Bravo Control.
0129, your last transmission indicates your steer is now 095.
By the way, what's your current weather?
0129 at the latest sequence time, 1200 Zebra. Bravo Airbase, 200 feet, 4/10. Light rain, wind 070 degrees at 4 knots. Altimeter 2997.
Roger.
The weather sure pitched me a curve. They had the front 50 miles north of Bravo. Unless I was looking at an old weather map, I should have read the sequences. Wouldn't have taken long.
Bravo Tower from 129. What are the GCA minimums for your base?
0129, GCA minimums for Bravo are 301 mile.
Well, I can't hack that. It's below minimums. What's the nearest alternate?
0129, closest alternate is Coco Air Base. Their last report was 4,000 broken at 5 miles.
Roger, we'll proceed to Coco. Will you make a check on the current weather there? That's about 40 miles from my present position. I don't have much fuel left.
Roger, 129er.
Things are beginning to pile up on me. First the oxygen runs out, and then Bravo's socked in. Now it'll be tight on fuel to Coco. I sure bought myself a lot of trouble. If I just had some oxygen, I could have stayed at altitude and cut down my fuel consumption.
Air Force 129, this is Bravo Tower.
Go ahead, Bravo.
Coco reports weather unchanged. 4,000 broken at 5 miles.
Roger.
I better get under this cotton-picking stuff while I can. There's Coco.
Coco Tower from Air Force 24129er.
MPFR have field in sight. Request landing instructions. I have 450 pounds.
Roger, 129, land runway 26, calling the break.
Roger.
Tower, this is 129, going around. Can't get my gear down.
Roger, 129, check on the brake again.
Come on, you. Make with the wheels.
Tower, looks like I have 1 down and 2 up.
We have the glasses on you. Your main gear still appears to be up.
switch to 138.6 for GTA.
Crash, we have an 86 number 24129er in the pattern. He's at minimum fuel and can't get his gear down. Landing runway 26.
I'm gonna fall down if I don't get this can in soon. It's gonna be close.
129, this is Caravan. Try your emergency gear system.
I already tried it.
Did you pull it full out?
Tower, gear down, final.
Well, no business today. He made it.
129, cleared for a right turn off, taxi to hide stand south side.
Well, that contest is over.
Tower, this 129. I'm flamed out. Request a tow.
Roger.
Let's go, boy. We gotta pick up a cold one. Now, some of you may be thinking that this pilot should have augured in. Some of you may be saying, well, this is a motion picture. These things just don't happen in real life. Things like excessive drinking, lack of sleep before a flight, failure to check the NOTAMs, not knowing that the frequency of the destination had been changed, miscalculation of the weather, not listening to the weather officer, and not checking the sequences, not remembering to conserve the oxygen supply when there's a faulty cabin pressure seal, improper operation of the emergency gear system. Yes, you're right. This pilot probably would have clobbered. But you're wrong if you think these mistakes just don't happen. They have happened, time and time again. And when errors of this nature pile up on you, they comprise a lethal weapon. Through the magic of the motion picture, this pilot survived. But how about you? In your flying, do you depend upon magic, luck, or safe flying?